Hello and welcome, I am Jyotsna Mohan. On the show today, the importance of the Supreme Court verdict on the Bilkis Bano case. In 2002, 11 men who had raped a woman, Bilkis Bano, have all been asked to return to jail. The court has severely indicted the Gujarat government, on whose orders these men, all upper caste Hindus, were released. The court has given these men, 11 men convicted of rape and murder, to return to jail within the next 2 weeks. Earlier this week, in a severe indictment, the Supreme Court not just struck down the order of the Gujarat court saying that it had no competence whatsoever to give remission to the convicts, but it also held in nullity an earlier order, an order of May 13, 2022, of another bench of the Supreme Court which had asked the Gujarat government to consider remission for the 11 men.
This is what the Supreme Court said in its path-breaking order. Justice encompasses not just the rights of the convicts but also the rights of the victims, and the primary duty of the court is to uphold justice and rule of law, adding that the rule of law must be preserved, unmindful of the ripples of the consequences. Allowing the men to remain free, the court said, would not be in consonance of the rule of law.
Well, let's just do a quick recap of the events that led to these men being sent to jail and where they should remain. But during the Gujarat riots, under Narendra Modi being the chief minister of the state, these men who were Bilkis Bano's neighbors, whom she said she saw almost daily, came together to gang rape her. Not just that, in broad daylight, they murdered 14 of her family members. She was 5 months pregnant at the time, just 20 years of age. One of those killed was her 2-year-old daughter. She was snatched from Bilkis Bano and her head was flung on her stone. Yet these men were freed. And they were received with garlands, they were given laddus, sweets were distributed, women came and put tilaks on their forehead, and they were called sanskari Brahmins. The country shrugged and by and large moved on. Incidentally, there has been more outrage over tourism in Maldives than there was over the remission given to Bilkis Bano's rapists and murderers. The government remained silent, as did its Women and Child Development Minister, Smriti Irani.
The Supreme Court has spoken for Bilkis Bano and the women of the country, where on an average 86 rapes take place daily. The bench of Justices B.V. Nagaratna and Ujjal Bhuyan have severely indicted the Gujarat government for what it labelled as its usurping of power. The exercise of power by the state of Gujarat is an instance of usurpation of power and abuse of power. The state of Gujarat acted in complicit with the convicts. It was this very apprehension that led this court to transfer the trial out of the state, it said. The matter, the court said, fell within the jurisdiction of the Maharashtra government as perpetrators were tried and punished by a Mumbai court. The trial had been shifted out of Gujarat, where the multiple crimes took place, to Maharashtra by the Supreme Court in 2004 after concerns that the trial could be compromised. 4 years later, a special CBI court in Mumbai convicted and sentenced the men.
The remission plea could only have been put forth in Maharashtra. Why then did the Gujarat government jump in? Who was it trying to save, or what was it trying to hide? The Gujarat government has told the Supreme Court that the remission of the convicts had a stamp of approval of the Home Ministry.
They have very categorically stated what is the legal analysis and reason for setting aside, quashing the remission orders and directing the convicts to return to prison within a fortnight. The court has said, and it's a scathing indictment of the state of Gujarat. The court has said that the law is clear. The appropriate government is the government where the accused are tried and sentenced, which, as we know, in the case of Bilkis Bano, which is a case emerging from the violence that took place in 2002 in Gujarat. And in this particular trial, there were about 14 counts of murder, including little babies and infants, and gang rapes of women, including a pregnant woman. And in this case, the trial was transferred by the Honorable Supreme Court to a special court in Maharashtra, where they were convicted, and that conviction has been upheld by all superior courts. Therefore, the appropriate government, as has been decided by this court and which is plain in the meaning of the Code of Criminal Procedure, Section 432, was the state of Maharashtra.
Look now at the woman who epitomizes courage under fire, brutally assaulted physically and then repeatedly assaulted mentally. For 20 years, she lived the life of a fugitive. Bilkis Bano says she can finally breathe again. Today is truly the new year for me. I have wept tears of relief. I have smiled for the first time in over a year and a half. I have hugged my children. It feels like a stone the size of a mountain has been lifted from my chest, and I can breathe again. This is what justice feels like. She adds, a year and a half ago, on August 15, 2022, when those who had destroyed my family and terrorized my very existence were given an early release, I simply collapsed. I felt I had exhausted my reservoir of courage until a million solidarities came my way. Thousands of ordinary people and women of India came forward. They stood with me, spoke for me. You gave me the will to struggle to rescue the idea of justice, not just for me, but for every woman in India. I thank you. Even as I absorb the full meaning of this verdict for my own life and for my children's lives, the dua that emerges from my heart today is simple: the rule of law above all else and equality before law for all.
In this episode of Table Talk with Joe, I am also joined by author, activist and journalist Revati Lal, who was one of the petitioners in a group of women who have fought to get justice for Bilkis Bano. She helps me to recreate the events that will forever remain a black mark in India's collective conscience.
Well, we didn't actually sort of meet. We just communicated online. Subhasini Ali and Kapil Sibal got together, decided to file this petition because all of us, like the rest of us, their conscience was stirred when India's 75th year of independence was used as an abomination to celebrate, in a way, the release of these convicts on that day. In which case, this means that it's not just about women, it is about a democracy that is celebrating the release of people who are part of a pogrom against Muslims. So it's a very strong anti-Muslim message being sent out by the state. And there were lots of questions about justice, about democracy, which applies to men, women, children, everyone in the country, and about the basic tenets of humanity. It goes beyond just our basic fabric of democracy. It is an abomination and a blot. The 75th year of independence should always be described as a dark day, the darkest day in India's independent history for this release of these 11 convicts. And so it's because all of us were shocked beyond belief by this that we decided that we had to file this petition. We didn't have any high expectations. We didn't have low expectations of the court. That's why we filed the petition. But we were wondering whether there will be other things at play which will prevent this from reaching its fruition. So I was pleasantly surprised and very, very, very happily so, because I felt that there's a chink of light in a very, very dark, toxic political space.
State officials said in court that the 11 men, first convicted by a trial court in 2008, had spent more than 14 years in jail and were released after factors such as their age and good behavior in prison were taken into consideration. They were released by the Gujarat government on the basis of an outdated 1992 remission policy, which has since been revised by a law in 2014 that prohibits remission release for those convicted of serious crimes like rape and murder.
Instead, these criminals were released. Incidentally, Gujarat was just months away from elections. They celebrated its 75th Independence Day. These men were given a hero's welcome and a country buried its conscience.
In September, the top court had questioned whether the convicts have a fundamental right to seek remission and if convicts of such crimes should be allowed the opportunity to reform and reintegrate with society. A look at the names of the men, all 11 of them gang rapists and murderers.
This orgy of hate has become a performance orchestrated by politicians at the highest level, and it's because we want these fantasies of hate. We consume them. We are the voyeurs. So I felt that I suppose that's the reason why the Bilkis story is important, and it speaks to that larger process.
A brief recap of how the Bilkis Bano case has been thwarted at regular intervals. On the 28th of February 2002, Bilkis and her family fled their home in Randhikpur in Dahod district of Gujarat after riots broke out following the Godhra train burning the day previously. They took shelter in multiple places, escaping a murderous mob. A month later, Bilkis, then 5 months pregnant, was raped. 14 of her family members were killed by the mob. The next day, the police station does not mention rape in the FIR, even though Bilkis identified 12 of those men. Almost a year later, the court accepts the police request for case closure. In December 2003, the case is transferred to the CBI by the Supreme Court, and in 2008, the rapists are convicted. The Supreme Court upholds this conviction in 2017 and 2 years later orders 50 lakh compensation for Bilkis Bano, which she has to struggle to get at every step. In August 2022, the rapists are released and the Supreme Court quashes that remission in January 2024.
What if the men don't surrender or are declared fugitives? Wellington Express reports that none of them are at home or have been seen there for a while.
The court said that the order that was obtained in 2022 May from this court saying that the state of Gujarat will decide is an order which was obtained by playing fraud upon this court. All facts were not placed before the court. If such an order is obtained, that order has no meaning in the eyes of law. It is a nullity in the eyes of law. And there are many judgments of the court which have been cited. Therefore, the court has said that given all this, the manner in which the remission orders were passed by the state of Gujarat, which had no power to do so, and the state of Gujarat should have actually gone in review and said, this order is wrong, it's contrary to the law, it's contrary to the judgments of the court. But they acted in a manner by granting, and they said a few things about, I'm yet to read the judgment, it has yet to be made available. They also said that the arbitrariness with which the discretion was exercised and the usurpation of power by the state of Gujarat, for all these and more reasons, rule of law must prevail. The court will uphold the rule of law, and therefore all the convicts have been directed to go back to prison within a fortnight.
When you try and break open a rock and you have an axe, it may be the millionth blow that splits this open. But did the first blow not matter because you didn't see anything on the other side? And then will you stop waiting to keep at it till you reach the millionth blow? And to use the RSS's own words, when the Babri Masjid was destroyed, and a journalist I know went up and spoke to the highest members of this, and they said, well, in the years after, you haven't won any election. And they said, Kaam jari hai. Well, that's something that we must learn from. We've got to keep chipping away at that rock of hate and keep saying to ourselves, Kaam jari hai.
The National Crimes Record Bureau shows an almost 20% increase in rape cases in the country. 10% of these are crimes against minors, and there's still a large fraction of incidents that are not reported, especially in the rural and marginalized milieu. Giving justice to Bilkis Bano was the hope that women needed. Instead, it has taken more than 20 years of setbacks for her.
Do you think in your mind that this could be a pivotal moment, this judgment?
It absolutely is, but it's up to us to take a judgment and make it into a pivotal moment. For example, the Shah Bano case, the judgment which turned the tide of Indian politics in 1976, just for a quick reminder to people watching, was this Muslim woman who divorced her husband from Madhya Pradesh, went to the court and asked for alimony, and the court granted her that alimony, and then the Congress, which had a brute majority, was scared that they would lose the conservative Muslim vote, especially in a state like UP. So 8 years later, they drafted a law in 1986. They passed a maintenance law according to which they said Muslim women can no longer access common law, and they have to go through the Islamic legal process in order to obtain alimony. And by doing that, they forever allowed the BJP to put a foot in the door and change the narrative of this country and say the Congress doesn't care about women, they don't care about equal rights, they are sham, and they're only following politics of appeasement. So they allowed that. But it took a very long time from 1986 to 2014 for that foot in the door to become a hard, congealed space and become the mainstream politics that we're seeing today. So now we have a Bilkis Bano. And it's going to possibly take a few decades like the Shah Bano case did. We don't know how long. Because these things are very slow to yield, and it's up to us, the electorate, the people of this country, to play that role and make this judgment count. Like we made the Shah Bano judgment count, and we said, well, the Congress doesn't actually believe what it says. And that mattered to us, and that's why we voted them out, and we said that the Congress is an elite party, they don't say what they mean. We did all of that, right? Now we have to be able to hold on to this moment and say, the BJP is behaving like the Congress did, but in saffron robes.
What does it say about a country when a court has to sidestep in and to put rapists and murderers back in jail where they belong? I'll leave you with a thought, with a question. What happened to Bilkis Bano? Why was the country quiet? It took a collective of women, a collective of ordinary women to come together to fight for justice. When rapists and murderers are set free by sidestepping the law, have we lost a moral compass, or are we going to ask for answers? I leave you with that thought. Thank you for watching.